اتخذت إحدى أشهر الفنانات في أمريكا الفنانة جورجيا أوكيف من قرية أبيكيو بولاية نيومكسيكو استوديو لها سنوات عديدة، وقد استوحت منها المناظر الطبيعية بما فيها منحدرات مختلفة الألوان ومرتفعات من الحجر الرملي تتناثر فيها أشجار الأرز والتي بفضلها اشتهرت لوحاتها. وقد أصبحت قرية أبيكيو الهادئة مستعمرة للفنانين، وبين سكانها ربيعة وبنيامين فان هاتم، وهما موسيقيان وفنانان ومسلمان. تقدم ربيعة أعمالا فنية باستخدام الفسيفساء، أما بنيامين فينحت الخشب ويصنع الأثاث.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mohammed Benjamin van Hattem. I was born in the Netherlands, actually. Over the years, now I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is in the United States these days.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rabia van Hattem. I'm an American Muslim. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
من أنزل الأمطار وفجر الأنهار وأنبت الأزهار تزخرف الجبال من ينشر الصباح ويرسل الرياح ويملأ البطاح برزقه الحلال. الله الله
I've been a Muslim for about 35 years. I became a Muslim in 1975. After studying, when I was younger, I used to study religion quite regularly. I was very interested in religious studies, but I did not actually follow any specific program. After I graduated from high school, I traveled to a lot of different places, studying with different religious teachings. I came from a Catholic background originally, and just trying to find a way that satisfied this religious, spiritual way that satisfied my...
I was born in San Francisco in a Jewish family. I became Muslim when I was 25 years old. I'm 60 now, so I've been Muslim for 35 years. The reason why I chose Islam began actually when I was very young. I think I was 11 years old, and when my parents, as Zionists, took me to Israel, and because of the time change, I woke up at Al-Fajr and heard the Adhan when I was 11 years old. And I think something entered my heart at that age. I didn't know what it was, but I wanted to follow that sound. And when I woke up in the morning to look where that sound came from, I only saw barbed wire and guns. And I didn't understand that. And I spent many, many years trying to follow that sound through all that warfare, trying to understand it.
I remember, interestingly enough, riding in my hometown on a bicycle, and somebody actually mentioned the name Allah, which is the first time really that I had heard the name Allah mentioned, and it had a great resonance. From the very beginning, it had a great resonance. And so after that, I became more and more interested in this, and one of the things that I had been trying to find in all these ways of religious studies, I had been trying to find a way where I could practice exactly what its prophet or its founder of that religion, the very practice that he had practiced, the very same essence that he had practiced. And everywhere I went, I found changes in the practice of the religion in and of itself. And coming out of coming from my background, I was a monotheist. I had acceptance of one God.
But I found myself really wanting a spiritual path. I ended up in university studying religious studies academically. It was really a cover-up. I really wanted to live a spiritual life. I didn't know how. So I felt if I just went and studied and read books and sat with teachers, I could find what I wanted. But after I finished university, I hadn't found what I wanted. So I found myself going back to Jerusalem again. I'd been many times before with my family and on my own, because obviously I was following that melody. And I ended up living on the Mount of Olives, studying with a sheikh. I had to break ties with my family. I became Muslim.
Islam was sort of always been the furthest from my paradigm. I had really knew as religion, because I was attracted to other things, and Islam was sort of the furthest from my studies. I went through a sort of I would say a strong soul searching at that moment, because Islam had really been was sort of the furthest from my mind as a religion. I came and it sort of at that point were very hesitant about, reticent to accept. But at the same time, I realized this was what God was showing me. This was what Allah was showing me. And so at that point, I remember going through an inner struggle, thinking, realizing that if I took this was a way that was there for the rest of my life. And at the same time, Allah was saying, well, you've been looking for this and I showed it to you. So are you going to take it or are you not going to take it? And at that point I realized I had no choice but to accept what God had given me, had showed to me. And that was sort of the entry point of my way into Islam. And part of that, I met my wife. We studied in Jerusalem together because I met her. She came to the last sort of meditation camp that we organized in France up in the high mountains, and that's where I met her. And she ended up traveling to Jerusalem too, and we re-met there, and so we ended up both studying at the same time in Jerusalem and getting married there. So that's in short.
My family was very, very upset with me because, of course, they couldn't understand it was a spiritual choice. Well, my parents were always very judgmental and angry. And after they passed away, I felt my relationships with my sisters were better. They're not as judgmental. Most of my life, I've tried to repair my relations with my family.
My family, I would say, on part of my parents, they couldn't quite understand what had motivated me to become Muslim, but there was no animosity, and it was more just not understanding, because it was out of their paradigm. I mean, I grew up in Holland in the 50s in a somewhat narrow paradigm, I would say, and so it was completely out of their paradigm. So they really didn't understand. At the same time, I would say most of my siblings, I come from a family of 5. Most of my siblings ended up really being agnostic more than anything else. So just the fact of they could relate to me because I was a believer helped them just, relate better. But this is sort of a part of the modern times. I mean, a lot of people coming out of, traditional religions either try and find another way that satisfy their spiritual need, or many of them become agnostic and secularized, especially in Europe, which was where I came from.
They have no interest in my life as a Muslim. I think they've come to respect me more as a person because of the lifestyle that I live. It has things that they find quite beautiful and uplifting. But they don't really associate it with Islam. And they don't want to know about Islam.
بالنسبة إلى آل فان هاتم، الحياة الجميلة هي الحياة في ظل الإيمان بالله. والاعتقاد الذي يكمن داخلهما بأنه من خلال الله حظيا بالفرصة لإيجاد الجمال من خلال أعمالهما وتعبيراتهما الفنية.
I think my husband and I have a very, very deep compulsion to create beauty. And it's part of our being Muslim. We just feel that being Muslim is an expression of beauty. And we're just obsessed with expressing beauty. About the mosque on our property, it was, we raised the money for it. It was a real grassroots effort. The men were involved in the construction. I took on more of the finishing work, painting and, finishing the woodwork. But my husband did the beautiful door, and it was fun laying the rug.
على الرغم من أن بنيامين تقاعد الآن كنحات خشب وصانع أثاث متفرغ، إلا أنه ما يزال يقضي معظم وقته في ورشته يصنع عناصر من الخشب والسيراميك التي ترتبط بحبه للإسلام. يصنع بنيامين حامل مصاحف قابلا للطي من تصميم ابتكره حديثا.
One time somebody gave me a whole box of broken watches. I've really enjoyed using them. It's not really about the odds and ends. It's just putting them together in a way that just creates beauty and meaning for me. I think this was a bolo piece. In New Mexico, men wear these to hold their tie. I think that's what it was. I mean, I ask people all the time, just give me your broken stuff. Sometimes I even go to junk shops and buy a bag for a few dollars.
Sort of dichotomy in Islam about music.
There's different schools of thoughts about music.
Different schools of thought about music, and some people, we call them stringophobics, and we've run into many of those over the years. Because we we come out of an Ottoman tradition, I would say, and it's a very accepted, long-standing accepted tradition that goes back hundreds of years. And it's uplifted many, many people. And the one thing in Islam that is so important is that even though we all come from the same paradigm, we come from the same deen and from the same origin, and we practice the same pillars, and from there we have the same faith. There's many